Okay.
No, you're good.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's helpful to have everyone have a 11 by 17 in front of them.
Sure. Yeah. Do you have any extras that could be handed out or? Okay. Oh, that would be great.
I hope so.
Is this exhibit number one, the need for new city hall?
This would probably be a good one to ask us to take a couple photographs.
I'll text Shane too, because he's over on that side. You could get a good, angle.
We're using this clock, I guess.
Is there a block?
Just to get attention.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the September 15th Credit River Planning Commission meeting to order. If you could all rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for being here tonight. Appreciate it. All commissioners should have received a copy of tonight's agenda. We have nothing to approve on the consent agenda. We have two items to discuss tonight under general business: the Summergate concept plan and a new shoreline ordinance for the city. Does any commission member want to add or amend tonight's agenda? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
I have a motion by Abe. Is there a second? Seconded by Amy. All in favor of approving tonight's agenda, signify by saying aye. And again, aye. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion to approve tonight's agenda is carried. We have nothing on the consent agenda. We have no public hearings tonight, so we're going to move right into general business.
Okay.
The first item on general business is the Summergate concept plan. Each planning commission member should have received a number of items, including a resident guide that was mailed on August 31st, along with a concept sketch plan, a memo dated September 8th from the city planner, Cindy Nash, as well as city engineer Shane Nelson and city administrator Mark McNeil. We also received tonight 10 written statements from residents, and everyone should have received that, as well as city council members. Before I ask city planner Nash to take us through the staff memo, I just kind of want to set the stage tonight for those in attendance. This isn't a public hearing, but we're willing to listen to resident comments and concerns tonight. We'll talk a little bit about that more in a bit. We're going to have Cindy do a presentation first, Then we'll listen to the applicants to do a presentation if they still choose, and then we'll get into the resident comments. And hopefully that way you'll get to listen to a little bit about information. This is the first step in the long process. So there'll be a lot of questions. In fact, tonight when you do your resident comments, we're going to be listening to them, put them in the record, but we won't be responding to them because this is the first meeting of many. And there's most of the questions won't be able to be answered tonight because there's so much work that's still ahead of us. So hopefully that works for everyone else. And I'm going to kick it off to Cindy then. Do a little presentation for us.
Thank you. So I did want to start tonight with, for the benefit of everybody in the audience that maybe hasn't been part or as involved in the journey of the city's development of its comprehensive plan. I did want to give some history of how we got to where we are today, to sort of set the stage for why we're talking about this type of development. So Credit River actually has a pretty long history of planning and setting the stage for sewer development in the city. Back in the 2000s, the Metropolitan Council designated the northern third of Credit River as the part of a long-term sewer service area. And when they did that, and Scott County was the planning and zoning authority for Credit River Township at the time, they zoned and guided in their comp plan that same area, that northern third roughly of the city, what is now the city, is urban expansion reserve. And the purpose of urban expansion reserve is to save those lands for so that they can be developed with urban style developments on city sized lots with water and sewer. So we're required under state law and specifically the Metropolitan Land Use Planning Act to adopt a comprehensive plan that's consistent with the regional plan that's prepared by the Met Council, the current version of which is called Thrive 2040. These are updated every 10 years. And so every 10 years, every community in the 7-county metro area has to update its comp plan to address any changes in that Thrive document, along with updated forecasts and things like that. So this is showing, this is out of the Met Council's, an excerpt out of the Met Council's long-term sewer service area map. And that's showing that portion of Credit River up here that is in that long-term sewer service area. So it's everything that's shown in this kind of light brown color. And it's been part of that area for about 20 years now. The Met Council does require us to plan for future development within that long-term sewer service area at densities that average 3 housing units per net acre. And
Cindy, one thing, is everybody familiar with the Metropolitan Council, who they are, what they do? Yes, no? Okay, go ahead.
so, so as said before, Scott County has guided this part of Credit River for urban expansion reserve for about 20 years at this point in time. So this is the 2001 Scott County zoning map for the portion that's Credit River, and everything that is in that white color up here is part of the long-term sewer service area, along with these neighborhoods that were developed and they're on septic, but they're pretty small lots in Country Court and Casey Addition, and all of those are also in that long-term sewer service area. So then in 2008, well, in the 2005 to 2009 timeframe, basically, Credit River actually did start to draft its own comprehensive plan at that point in time. And we're initially considering incorporation as a city. That effort was put on the shelf back then, following that 2008 market crash. But a lot of the information that we have today that the current comprehensive plan was built on was actually, a lot of it was done back in that late 2000s timeframe. So then when Credit River didn't finish going through that comp planning effort, the township stayed within the county's comprehensive plan, and the 2010 zoning map for Scott County still shows, of course, all those areas as planned urban expansion reserve. Then in 2019, Credit River did adopt its own comprehensive plan. And this is what the future land use map in the city's current comprehensive plan looks like. It's very similar to what it has been for the last 20 years with those same areas shown in that long-term sewer service area. And a few parcels, specifically these existing neighborhoods that have those small lots on septic are in, they're in the metropolitan urban service area, which is that next step after the long-term sewer service area. Those would be ready to be developed or to bring water and sewer into them today. Most likely as a retrofit with like a road reconstruction project type of thing. They also had the Pearson mine is also guided in that metropolitan urban service area in the plan right now. The properties that we're talking about, however, are located in this area. So they're still in urban expansion reserve. They're not in the MUSA, as we will abbreviate and call that. And that is one of the items that we'll discuss later, but that they would need to ask for a comprehensive plan amendment to bring that forward into the MUSA at this point in order for any possible development to occur. So we are required to update our plan every 10 years. That next update cycle will likely start in 2016. And it's anticipated
2026.
2026.
Probably.
Yeah, it's a little late, isn't it?
Back to the future.
2026. And it is anticipated that at that point, when the Met Council issues their system statements to us in 2025, they'll tell us what we have to plan for. And some or all of that long-term sewer service area would show up likely as MUSA area as a requirement in the next comprehensive plan. So you'll be required to go through those planning efforts in a few years from now. So then just kind of completing our timeline is that the city adopted, well, they were still the township then, township adopted the zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations in 2020 and early 2021 started doing building inspection services as well. And then sort of the last larger milestone that we've had is that obviously Credit River became a city in June of 2021. So with that, as sort of the stage, Summergate has submitted this concept plan for our review and consideration. The purpose of submitting a concept plan is typically in most cities, it's going to be to look at that subdivision design, make comments on it, and we'll do all of that as well with this one. But in Credit River's case, there's extra steps that Credit River would have to take in order to consider doing a comprehensive plan amendment at this time. So part of this has been an ability for us to start asking those questions, figuring out what all would need to be done. And we're still in that exploratory phase as well, as city staff and consultants. So what they are showing in the concept plan is 188 lots. The lots are shown as 65-foot wide lots. It'd be very similar in size to some of the neighborhoods that are just up Hampshire in Savage. And they have purchase agreements for the properties that are shown with those brighter colors. And then anything that's labeled ghost plan is something that we always ask developers to do so that we can see how roads and things might extend into other properties in the future, because we don't want to, just as an example, we wouldn't want to stub a road into a location where there's a really large wetland or some feature that needs to be worked around in the next property. So it doesn't, when you see these ghost plans, it doesn't mean that anything's imminent on any of those other properties. It's just to help us with our evaluation of the plans as well. They are showing some outlots with some preserved conservation areas and some stubbed roads to connect into some of the neighboring properties that would end in temporary cul-de-sacs at this point in time. And but other than that, this isn't very far along. It doesn't have that level of detail to answer a lot of questions that I'm sure a lot of people have about drainage and water and just how many trees are being saved or any of that sort of information. So this is really to start asking those questions and figure out what all of the conversations are that need to occur here. With that, I'd like to turn it over to representatives from Summergate to give a little presentation and talk about their proposed development.
Ma'am, we're going to get into the resident comments in a little bit, but we'd like to have the applicants speak next. Right, but we have to follow, in order to be productive tonight, we need to follow a plan. So could we have the applicants step to the microphone, maybe press the button until you see the green light go on? And if you could provide your name and where you're from and all that before.
Thank you, Chair, members of the commission, members of the audience. My name is Brian Tucker, and I'm the project manager for Summergate Development. And with me, I have Casey Walschlager, who's the COO for our company. We're based out of Lakeville, and we're primarily single-family residential developers. Our bread and butter is working with interested property owners to identify properties to develop, take it through the process, and then we typically work with either local builders, depending on market demand, or with national builders who are interested in having additional lots to build on in our communities. As Cindy mentioned, we do have contracts on some of these properties that are identified here. We've also been talking with builders generally about their interest in this area, and as you can imagine, just based on location and kind of what's been the current market, there's been a lot of builder interest in this area. As Cindy mentioned, also, this is very much an early plan. Typically in a process like this, we'll oftentimes have to do up to a dozen iterations of a plan to actually get it to a point where it meets all the city expectations, meets minimum Met Council requirements, responds to neighbor concerns. And as she also indicated, there's a whole host of ordinances related to protecting wetlands, identifying significant trees, making sure that we try to keep as many of those as we can, trying to have a layout that meets all the again, city requirements and expectations. So chances are, if we're able to move forward on this project, it's going to look very different 12 months from now than it does up on the screen. But in our discussions with the planner and with city personnel, it was really determined that getting something in front of this group to at least initiate these discussions was really important, because the planning commission and city council have a whole host of things to work on before we can even get in here for any kind of formal approval. So this is, again, very early in the process. So generally, we're just looking for input from planning commission, looking to understand kind of what the sequencing of steps is to potentially move forward with these properties. What you see here is, we read some of the comments that were received from neighbors, and I certainly understand them. I actually was in the public sector for about 20 years before starting this role, so I'm certainly familiar with concerns about development. But just to be clear, this is a low density project. In suburban cities like your neighbor Savage and Prior Lake, high density is like 16 units per acre and higher. Medium is 8 to 12, and then low density is usually in that 3 to 4 units per acre. And I understand that when you look at the surroundings, it's much higher density than what's there. So we're not disputing that. It's really a conversation of, as the city has set guiding for this area, and as the Met Council has set expectations for this area, it is designated for low density, and that's what this project is. In fact, 3 units per acre is the minimum that the Met Council wants to see when it comes to low density development to keep averages up. So we can certainly let the city planner and planning commission elaborate on those things, but I just wanted to make it clear that, this is representative of what we would typically see in a suburban area for new development. It's really kind of where the market's at right now. It's the kind of lots that we're doing all over the Twin Cities. So I know it looks like a shock initially, and I certainly understand that, but just wanted to set the context that this is really typical of single family.
Do you have experience to develop when there's no city and water? Is that pretty common when you're developing those things? Like there's nothing there today. I mean, we don't have city and water.
So yeah, and some of our due diligence as we work with cities, as we identify potential properties, is understanding what's the timeline and sequencing for getting utilities there.
Right.
Because we, along with most developers, we're really not in a market right now where it makes sense to do 10-acre parcels. And that's really the only kind of development you can do without utilities. So we understand that there is a process to get utilities here. I also know that you've been working for many, many years with the neighbor to the north to stage so that there is infrastructure available to this area when the cities are ready for that development to occur. So
I'm sorry, sir. We are not taking any comments or questions tonight. This is not a public hearing, and we have to be respectful to the speaker. And so I understand a lot of people have a lot of concerns and stuff, but that is not tonight. Later, there may be information that can be shared with you. We will take comment later, but that's a courtesy that the planning commission is wanting to extend to people here, and to the extent that we have time for it.
My apologies, won't happen.
I appreciate it. The other thing I've heard people talking and stuff, is you see, you're all on camera. We're trying to broadcast this so that people that couldn't attend here can watch this at home. And in conversations and stuff kind of interfere with the audio for them, so they won't be able to adequately hear. I know as a person who attends a lot of these meetings by Zoom in the past, it does kind of inhibit hearing what's going on here. And this is important to you. It's also probably important to some of these people. So I do ask that to the extent that you're able, try to keep any conversations to a minimum.
Thanks, Bob.
yeah, and Chair, if I could just elaborate. So it would be our expectation that this would develop with urban utilities.
Mhm.
And that's part of the discussion that the city needs to have is, the timing of that and the mechanism to have it available to the property. So we wouldn't be interested in the parcel if it wasn't being developed with utilities.
Okay.
And with that, we're happy to answer your questions. I don't know, Casey, if you have anything you'd like to add or,
I don't have any questions. I think we should open it up maybe now to resident comments. Cindy, did you want to add anything after listening to
No, I
what
don't,
Brian had to say?
I don't have anything additional at this time.
Okay.
Time limit.
Yeah, so what I'd like to do, let me get if anyone wants to speak tonight, please raise your hand so we can get an idea of. Okay. What I'd like to do is do 3 minutes each person. I'd ask that you come up to the podium, give your name and address. And then you'll get 3 minutes and we'll time it because we have a lot of people to speak. Once the comments start happening, if some of the things you wanted to say has already been addressed by the person before you or the persons before you, I would ask that you not come up to the podium or only address the things that haven't been addressed yet. And that way we'll be a lot more productive. And hopefully we will get through all of the comments. They will all be in the record. Like I said earlier, we're not going to be able to answer these tonight. It's more so that everyone can hear everyone's concerns so we can put it in the record. And as we work through this process, this is a day one of who knows how many days or years of this to happen. I don't know. But we just want everyone a chance, everyone a chance to speak. Like I said, we had 10 written comments. Those will also be put in the record. And I don't think I need to name the folks
No.
for that. So.
And with regard to those 10 written, those have been provided to the planning commission, been provided to the city council. All of us as the staff that will be working with the developer as this process goes on, we've all read them. Some of us have had discussions about them or what the concerns are, but these are all things that will be addressed during the whole process. This, as you've heard tonight, is not a public hearing, but there will be public hearings.
Yes.
And that at those times, you do have a right to speak. And at that point in time, there'll be information before the planning commission, and before the city council that they need to act on. And that's why at those points in time, they usually do have required under state law and our ordinance to have a public hearing. So today I would just ask that you try to limit yourself to the 3 minutes that the chair has granted and try to, again, if you agree with their comments, I'd like to refrain from clapping and, all the other things that a lot of times I see at these kinds of meetings that people have. We understand that most of you probably share some of the sentiments of the speakers. We just ask that you try not to repeat those comments so we can get to as many people as possible. We're trying to do this all within a half hour or so. So with that,
Yeah, so let's start out and I'll go
left side of the room first. We'll move this way, if that's all right with you. So, ma'am, you had a comment? If you could come to the podium, state your name and address.
We've lived here in Credit River for over 25 years.
What's your name and address, ma'am?
Catherine Mahoney, Creekwood Drive.
Thank you.
And I'm just curious, whatever happened to keeping Credit River a rural feel? You know, at all the meetings we attended when it was a town hall, that was the primary thing, is they were going to keep this a rural feel. Now, my idea of a rural feel is not what's in Savage. If I wanted that, I would have moved there. If we would have knew becoming a city was going to create this horrific situation, we would have sold or never moved here. I feel as though we've been lied to for 20 years. We were also told at nearly every meeting we went to, we would probably not need to worry about sewer and water in our area for a good 20 years. And I don't know what happened to all of that. I just feel lied to. And I also am a little curious about Summergate. How come there have been like 20 entities and there's so many other legal issues out there? It doesn't sit well with me that that's okay with everybody.
Thank you. Who would like to go next?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Monique Group, 16201 Hampshire Avenue. So I'm very aware of the 2040 comprehensive plan. I'm not shocked at all by the development, so not opposed to it. I'm opposed to making sure we are not opposed, really making sure we plan primarily for safety and security of residents. So looking at the comprehensive plan, I have a couple of major concerns that and I actually went through and copied off the first 8 pages of our land use chapter in the 2040 comprehensive plan and highlighted a few things that I think well, you're not the city council, but in Credit River's words, this we might just want to think about. So the first one is, I don't know how many people have actually come down Hampshire Avenue from the north up by Red Tail Ridge. So it's a pretty, it's a pretty windy road. Savage has developed it pretty well. Summergate, you actually are the neighbor to the north. Right now, Summergate is right across the creek on the east side of Hampshire Avenue. So it butts up to, so they were part of bringing in Savage, the sewer, and it's right there. It's right at the creek. So the sewer is right there. So one of the statements in our comprehensive plan is we want to encourage the provision of public utilities in a planned, orderly fashion that encompasses larger areas rather than a piecemeal parcel by parcel fashion. So what's happened here is they've literally picked up one parcel on the end of Hampshire Avenue. They're my neighbors. I care about them very much. But they took that one parcel in order to get sewer to come back to 165th Street, which leaves the other 7 owners on Hampshire Avenue going, what? Okay, so, and you can see there's a 90-degree, if you've ever come down that road, it is fully wooded, and there is a 90-degree turn. So anybody living on Hampshire Avenue coming out, you cannot see around. The brush, the woods, everything is right up to the road, and those are not being developed, so that won't change. And so if you're coming from the south, you have somewhat of a sight line, but it also goes downhill to the creek. So if you're coming out from the creek, you can't see coming from Hampshire Avenue. If you're coming from Hampshire Avenue, you can't see around the corner. So that's a real safety squeeze point in my concern right there. And that's because you only took one parcel and you got a really ugly spot there. Then let's just talk about the number of vehicles, okay, that are going to be going north-south. We just put a whole bunch of money into Texas, and we have 21, 165th, 154th. Those are the main east-west, but none of those go through. We have no other east-west, and we've got Murphy-Hanrahan to our east. So north-south is a big concern. So when I look at where we're ghost planning and where we're going to be able to maybe go east and west anywhere in there, because I have one way home. So when is Hampshire Avenue getting redone? When is that? How am I going to get home when the bridge over Hampshire Avenue has to be redone, when you guys come across from your development up north.
You have 15 seconds, ma'am.
So those are some of my safety and security concerns for the residents that live on Hampshire Avenue and through that squeeze point. You got a big school at the top of Hampshire Avenue. So there's a lot of traffic. That will feed into that school.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And Cindy, correct me if I'm wrong, there will be traffic studies that, and Shane, there'll be traffic studies that are done to determine whether the roads are safe. And
We'll review traffic and all of those types of items as during the course of a development. And in case it wasn't said before, I do want to ask that everybody who speaks signs up on the sheet at the podium, just so we make sure that we get everybody's name correct for the minutes. Thank
Right.
you.
could we have the next person that would like to speak?
Yeah, hi, my name is Mike Haberlack, 7905 165th Street. Thank you for this opportunity, by the way. Really appreciate it. I know you didn't have to do this. But just quick looking at the concept plan, and I know it's just first stages. But when I look at the plan, I count 9 cul-de-sacs there, which is a lot of cul-de-sacs. Now, I just happened to look on Credit River's website, and I found the Credit River subdivision regulations plan. And in there, section 945, design standard, subsection 21, paragraph J, item 2, states that permanent cul-de-sacs shall be prohibited, except in cases where shoreland or wetlands. And I know this is just, I'm just getting it on the record, and I know you guys know this. But when you look at that verbiage there, maybe 5 of those don't fit that. So I would just ask the commission, which I know you will, these plans are going to have to be redesigned if you're going by the regulations that you guys currently have. So that was just my comment, and I thanks.
Well,
thanks
thank
for
you.
listening.
And that, just so you know, that comment was in Cindy's memo to the commission. So we're aware of the cul-de-sacs. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dan Haugen, and I live at 165th Street, 7617 165th Street. And I'm not going to really talk about the plan tonight as much as I'd like you to really think about the orderly growth of Credit River. And we talked a lot about the MUSA line, really a lot about the Met Council and the control, but all of that really relates to sanitary sewer. And I think that one of the things that we need to think of is also water. And water is really, really probably your number one resource that you're going to need to manage. I guess the forefathers is what we probably want to call the township board was very creative and actually built a great relationship with the city of Savage. And they got 100,000 gallons per day of water. Now, my understanding is that needs to be utilized to be able to handle the growth, to be able to generate revenue, to be able to drill our own well within Credit River. So we really need to also go back through and think about where that water is utilized is also where that sewer is going to be really important. Now, the nearest that I could figure is we use about 100 gallons per person per day within the United States of water. So 100,000 gallons is going to produce right around 250 home sites. Now, if you add it, I think we can go up to about 200,000 gallons is what the agreement says. So what was put together with Savage. So that we could maybe stretch that up to 500 home sites. So you're going to really need to be cautious as you go back through that process. There's 2 connection points that is from Savage. One is on the eastern connection point, which is what the Tollefson or Summergate is working on right now. But also there's a western connection, which is over by Prior Lake Aggregate. And that actually is another opportunity to really be able to service the communities that I've heard are really in need of sanitary sewer. The Casey Addition, the Country Court, some of those areas. So don't limit your ability to be able to service them by prematurely going back through and organizing and meeting the needs of a short-term piece for something that you really need from a long-term piece.
Makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you. And hopefully that sign-up sheet is being passed around. Great, thank you.
Hi, my name's Zach Leon, 16170 Creekwood Circle. Just here to talk about turtles briefly. My neighbor Ron Hendrickson on Murphy Lake Boulevard had Blanding's turtle nest in his driveway last year. So just wanted to, as you guys are doing all the work involved in this, just bringing up, hey, there's a threatened species that should at least fall under your radar of paying attention to. It is, the Blanding's turtle is up for reevaluation on the endangered species list
What
next
kind of-
year.
What is that
A
called?
Blanding's turtle.
Landings.
Yeah, looks kind of like a turtle. It's got a yellow, kind of a yellow neck thing going on. Yeah. But I mean, they're a very threatened turtle. They have to be over 20 years old to even reproduce. And they're clumsy. And with the amount of traffic increase on the Murphy roads, you know, some turtles gonna be getting stomped out there. So I'm just here to speak for the turtles. And if you know, I know some people in Fish and Wildlife. If you guys need any information, please feel free to ask for help.
Great.
And that's
Thank
all I
you,
got.
sir.
Thanks.
Thanks. And Cindy, correct me, wrong, this, the DNR looks into wildlife, right? When these things are being developed, is that
Oh.
correct? Or don't you know?
Not exactly.
So how does that type of issue, do you think, how does that get addressed?
So not every project is submitted to the DNR for review. Certain projects are in certain sizes and certain review periods. Looks like Shane wants to chat.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, so if this process continues, later on, there'll be a process called the wetland delineation. And with that wetland delineation, it's reviewed by several agencies. One is a representative of the city, another is a representative of Bowser. Occasionally, the Corps of Engineers will attend those meetings, but also the DNR. And usually, if there is a threatened or endangered species, at that time during that wetland review is when the DNR or some staff will bring it to our attention if we're not aware of it. We are aware of it. We just recently overlaid 175th Street. We had a couple of residents that were very concerned about the Blanding's turtles, and we included precautionary measures in our specifications. So,
Okay.
yeah, I'll leave it at.
Great.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yes.
Specify what Bowser is.
Sure. Bowser is an acronym for Board of Water and Soil Resources. It's a state agency.
Not a member of Shannon. For those older people that remember.
My name is Lloyd Krochek. I live on Creekwood Road. Yeah. I'm looking at this concept plan, and it looks like a maze to me. And I would certainly hope that you could simplify it. And you know, there's so many winding roads and cul-de-sacs. It just seems pretty complicated. And that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Do we have the next resident?
Hi, I'm Denise Peterson, and I'm at 8030 165th Street East. And me and my husband are in the unfortunate and miserable position of being right here. 5 measly acres with 16 homes being proposed along our fence line. I feel like we're really getting shafted in this deal. We have horses. We moved there with a dream of being able to ride right off of our property and go into Murphy Hanrahan Park Preserve, where there's 14 or 15 miles of horseback riding trails. It hasn't really worked out that way because life is busy. I've just retired in the last year. I'm finally getting to a point where I could actually enjoy this beautiful landscape out in Credit River, what we thought we were going to be enjoying into our golden years. My husband's going to be retiring this spring, God willing. And the same thing. I mean, it's going to be destroyed. With the horses that we have, it creates a new problem as well. It's an attractive nuisance. You move 16 homes there. We can't be expected to talk to 16 homeowners and say, no, you may not feed our horses apples. No, you may not feed our horses carrots. They have health issues. These people might just think, well, I wonder if the horse would eat bread. I wonder if they would eat a cookie. Next thing you know, we've got vet bills, we've got sick horses, or we have adults or children that may be kicked, stepped on, run over, any number of things, an attractive nuisance. They're not bad animals, but they're animals and they can spook. And things do happen in Murphy's Law. If anything can go wrong, it does. And we're not in a position to have to be affording the massive amount of insurance that we might need to protect our financial well-being if something should go wrong. Thank you.
Okay,
That's
thank
all I
you.
need to.
My name is Tom Dunlop. I live just 2 doors down from Denise, 82, 165th Street. So actually, we're in this gray stuff over here. So Denise, the Johnstons, and the us. And I kind of want to echo what Denise was talking about, the way of life thing. We've been there 20 years. We built, so we actually developed on what was formerly vacant land. So I get development. I understand it's coming. We all, I think, in this room want to keep a way of life that we kind of hoped for. What we, I guess, well, in my case, ignorantly thought was just going to be there until I die. Okay, my fault. I know from talking with somebody who I probably shouldn't bring up their name, so I won't, but the knowledge of this was out there. And it has honestly felt like it's been handled to this point. So kudos to you guys for listening to us. Up to this point, it's felt like it's been kind of handled in closets and back rooms to the benefit perhaps of the landowners. And, you know, it's their land. They get to sell it to whomever. I get that.
And they don't report to us when they do that, when those negotiations
Right.
are going on.
Yeah, I think we all understand that. It's just sad that it's happened. And this is no offense to you guys, this is kind of the first result of that. And the neighbor to my east and the neighbor to his east, which then gets you to Murphy Lake Boulevard, would gladly sell to a developer. I'm not sure anybody's going to be interested in my property if it comes to that point. I'm not interested in selling other than to somebody that's interested in buying 10 acres of land with a great view and all that sort of thing. But that means I'm going to have perhaps more development to my east and then potentially to the north and of course to the south, because everything south of me is farmland really right now, or pasture land. So I would imagine developers would look at that as a much better option for them in terms of expense. Here's the big thing though. I just
You got about a minute left.
Okay, I'll be done with that. I'm really sad about the fact that, you know, these 86 acres or whatever it is, probably wooded 60 of them ish, give or take. And we're going to lose all that. And I really hope that there's some consideration given to some sort of a buffer if it does go to this extent, some sort of a buffer so that Denise doesn't have to worry so much about kids reaching their hand over with an apple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's all I got. Thank you for your time. I
Thank
appreciate it.
you.
Hi, my name is Neil Michaels, 7460 165th Street. We're we got it right here. So
Oh, I didn't see where you pointed to. Okay, thank you.
we moved in 94. It was wooded lots. We knew that the family that owned all of that would at some point sell it to development. But we were thinking, okay, it's 2.5, 3 acre lots. Great, that's fine. When we moved in, we're tree huggers, I'll admit it. So this gentleman talked about the turtles. I speak for the trees and the owls and the hawks that live there. There's a red-shouldered hawk family that lives just right in here. They've been there for years. No offense, sir, but you say you'll protect the trees. There's no way in heck you can put all of those roads in, all of those lots, all of the sewer, all of the water, and leave the trees. It just doesn't happen. When we moved in, we picked a house not based on what we thought would be a good spot. We picked it, so we had to take out one big tree. That was it. Our driveway's curvy because it was an old horse road. And to see this, it just tears me up to see all the woods go. So why can't we have 3 acre lots? Save the woods, save the animals that live there. That's all. Not this. This is not what Credit River is all about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Tim Conroy, 17215 Johanna Drive. I think I want to just take a minute and say, I feel partly responsible for this. I've lived in Credit River 19 years, moved out here. I live in the bad neighborhood, Casey Edition. But looking at this, I've come to city hall meetings. I'm usually alone. There's not a lot of people. So I'm a guilty, ignorant citizen of Credit River. I remember him talking about, we're going to hook onto water. We're going to come down here. I was oblivious. Now, after hearing that we can borrow water, buy water, that pushes more water and brings more civilization. Met Council, in my opinion, is kind of like my house. When I move in, I want to build a wall. I want to do this. I want to do gardening. Well, that was a pipe dream 19 years ago. It didn't happen. We changed, we adopted, we did something different. Why can't we change just because they said it in 2040 or whatever? Why does it have to follow that line? The next question was, we vote you people in so we can enjoy our life. We have ball games, kids, church, other things. We vote you people in so we don't have to watch every time. When this stuff sneaks through, we kind of get a little, holy smokes, what's happening? It would have been nice if you guys could have, you know what, this isn't going to fly. How do we narrow it down a little bit to make it more swallowable? I mean, I'm looking now after the 2020, I have townhomes to the east of me, and I just found out I'm going to be an industrial park to the right of me. I know civilization has to happen, but we still need to slow it down is all we're asking. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Hi, my name is Kelly DuPacky and I live on 7600 on 165th, which is this little corner right here. That's all. I live there with my husband and my 2 very young children. And like a lot of people, we moved here about 10 years ago and we fell in love with the area. We fell in love with the diverse culture that people that really enjoyed the outdoors and things like that. But we quickly realized that even though our address was Prior Lake, we actually lived in this township called Credit River. With the spread of the cities coming down to our area, we knew that we had a neighborhood that had the potential to increase. Yet our street on 165th remained without a center line, without a sidewalk, without a shoulder. People still walked on it. The kids unsafely drove on it on their bikes. And the dirt road just past our property that goes into the gray area is still unpaved and has a lot of problems with it. It's no surprise that, we were shocked when we saw this coming in. 188 homes is going to really have concerns on our street for safety. People talked about, hey, I'm sure I want to give you a perspective on 165th if you haven't been there before. We've already seen the impacts of the traffic with the Texas closure. We have cars that are just streaming down their streets with no regard for the people that are walking there. And that's after one closure. When I look at this and I see 2 extra outlets coming through, I'm really concerned for the kids. I'm really concerned for the people that are not only going to live in there, because I don't know if this had sidewalks on it. It doesn't look like it to me. I can't tell. But we definitely don't have sidewalks on 165th. So I'd like to understand the plan for what that would look like so that we have safety for our kids. When you look at the study that the US Department of Transportation did, it's 1.88 cars per home on average. So if we look at what is coming out of there right now with Creekwood and 165th, that's only, 252 vehicles. If you put the 188 houses in there, it's going to be 353. That's an increase of 140% of cars on the roads. It's a really dangerous flow of traffic for something that I don't think that the roads that you're looking to funnel into can hold. And what I really want to understand is, where's the plan? Where's the safety? Where's the snow removal? Where's the plan for the emergency vehicles that have to go in from one area or the other? What does that look like? These are all things that, regardless of whether you have this here or another place that you set precedents for in Credit River, you have to understand for those constituents and those people that are moving in, how are they going to be safe? Because from where I live with a large parcel right now, it's becoming something that I'm concerned about. This is only going to increase that. I'll end with one last fact. This development does have a plan that's 13 times higher density than the average in all of Credit River. And it's 3 times higher than our most dense place ever. So whatever we do here, we have to make sure that we do the right way for those people that are going to move in and those people that are going to look at this as the future.
Thank you very much. And the roads will be looked at. I mean, that's one of the things that was in Cindy's memo to the planning commission. It has to be looked at. Okay, thanks a lot. Bob, did anyone start the 30-minute timer? Because I forgot to do
Started
that.
about 25 after.
All right.
So we're getting close.
We're
to
getting
that.
close. How many haven't spoke that want to speak tonight? So I think we can listen to everyone. I think we're doing okay. We might extend it an extra 10 or 15 minutes. So go ahead, ma'am.
Appreciate it. I'll
Yeah.
probably refer to my notes so I can stay on task and
That's
on
fine.
time. My name is Nancy Gatormson. I live on Webster Court, 16230. For 30 years, I have lived due east of Credit River itself and the wetlands that are at the west of our property. I've actually seen and experienced firsthand the extent of the flooding and the power of the spring thaw and the summer downpours firsthand. Based on this Summergate proposal and the ghost plans, it's apparent to me that some of the development is being proposed for valuable wetland or floodplains. In your own 2019 Credit River watershed management plan, it appears to prioritize wetland protection, specifically with the objectives of no net loss of wetland function and value. And this includes direct impacts from filling and drainage, but also indirect impacts from stormwater inputs. This wetland that I've had the privilege of being able to enjoy for 30 years is a marvel. In hydrologic terms, this is a natural structure that has bounce. And what I mean by that is there is a capacity for excess water to spill well out of the boundaries of the river. And then slowly, as the input of the water decreases, the water level will recede by a combination of runoff, evaporation, and filtering into the groundwater. It's really a marvel. Like I said, I'm appreciative of it not every spring, but many springs. And this bounce has an effect of minimizing flooding. Limiting the size of this wetland by filling will easily lead to increased flooding for those in the path of the water. Just for example, Credit River is reported at 887 feet of elevation. Some of the properties north of the wetland on Dakota and Hampshire are at 891 and 900 feet of elevation. So there's not much of a margin of error there. For if you change how this thing floods and drains, people are going to have problems. Catastrophic problems. So my first concern is increased flooding. And then,
Give about 30 seconds, ma'am.
oh boy. Okay. Also, I'm just going to.
You can submit your comments too if you have it written.
Okay, let me just see if I can be brief. So the other major issue is the vulnerability of this wetland. There are 4 types of wetlands. This one, I'm not a naturalist, but I'm a keen observer of nature, and I have been there. It's got sedge meadows, low prairies, seasonal flood basins. It is classified, in my opinion, as an exceptionally susceptible to wetland degradation from stormwater impacts.
wetland. And I think someone else is probably going to address the wetland, the stormwater impacts.
Okay,
I appreciate all of your time.
thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate the information you provided.
All right, good evening. My name is Jake Johnston. We live at 8056 165th Street. This parcel right here, 10 acres with ghost plan in the backyard. And I wanted to address it. Cindy, did you get my email with the full? I sent maybe like 4:30. I was a little late, but
Today,
yeah. Wanted to make sure you got it. So obviously we'll
probably
get to
gone
everything. So if you could pass it along.
Yeah, we'll get it.
Obviously a lot of concerns with several neighbors. And the first one I wanted to bring up was also a reason that we decided to become a city. You know, there's seven bullet points in the comp plan. One of those was protect environmental sensitive areas. And on Tuesday morning, I was made aware that the city does not have a tree preservation and restoration ordinance. That's alarming because this development here is developing about 86 acres, which arguably could be the most dense woods north of 21, if not all of Credit River. And if you're not familiar with what that means or what it is, you can look to Prior Lake, our neighbors, or Savage, who have a very comprehensive plan that includes tree replacement formulas, tree inventory requirements, and so much more. Basically, you're tagging trees depending on species and size, and then the developer is obligated to restore those somewhere else. So the fact that we don't have that in place kind of sets the precedent for a developer to come in and kind of tell us what their plan is, and basically what our plan is going to be to preserve our lands. And to me, that seems backwards. Without that in place, that itself seems pretty mature or premature to consider any development, whether it's this project or any other project in the city. Page 1 of chapter 2, land use, letter G says or reads, deny premature development proposals based upon applicable city ordinances. In this case, I feel it's very premature because the city doesn't even have that ordinance in place. In my opinion, it's something that should recommend planning commission to recommend denial of this plan until we're ready to look at something. Other things, you know, we understand that development and growth is inevitable. You know, the question should be how quickly we choose to grow, how densely we choose to develop things, and how it affects our citizens' quality of life. One of the other bullet points in why we should become a city was to maintain or enhance quality of life in the community. This obviously doesn't fit that. The shocking density of this project is obviously nowhere near the surrounding communities. Creekwood, which is also zoned R1, is one house per 1.3 acres. To the southwest, 167th, 169th is about 1 acre to every 4. Right south of it is one house to every 11.2. Same to the east. To the north of it is one house per 8 acres. The density of the subject property is one house per 28 acres. The actual proposal that Summergate has here is 19 times the average density around it.
Jake, can you wrap up?
Yeah, yep. You know, this is considered incompatible housing density. And again, we became a city because we wanted to maintain or enhance the quality of life. In our opinion, that doesn't work. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cindy, so while the next resident comes up to the podium, a lot of these acres or the average acreage for each lot, I mean, they were bigger because you needed a septic field for those lots. I mean, we don't have city water or city sewer today, so you had to have bigger lots when you built, correct?
correct,
And the reason why they're smaller in this development is because we're bringing in city water and city sewer.
correct.
Okay. Just want to make that point, so it might be clear to everyone.
Good evening, Credit River Planning Commission. My name is Kevin Trinagel. I live at 7031 167th Street East, so I'm actually on the next street south. So I'm here tonight to express my concern for the development being proposed. As what was already mentioned, Credit River is unique. You know, it offers space, privacy, that rural feel we're all talking about. And you know, this development's, as we said, it's in a stark contrast to lifestyle we all value. You know, it's not compatible to the culture. And so again, I live on 167th, and you know, I just want to give kind of a perspective to, you know, we're talking about this. I also want to give consideration to further south, because once we get sewer water to 165th, you know, it's going to keep going, and that's, and I understand that. But again, you know, this is going to kind of set a precedent here. And so, you know, I would just urge you to, you know, listen to the voices of the residents. And, you know, those of us on 167th, Jennifer Lane, 169th, you can see it, those have easements. They're going to be connected, at least the way I see it on the plat map. And we're going to have the same traffic and density issues in the future. And so again, I'm not directly impacted, but you know, just concerned about the precedent, and just you know, I'd appreciate future development, or I do appreciate it, but I have concern about just the dense residential area that we're talking about. Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Kathy Michaels, and I'm at 7460 165th Street. A couple years back, when we had the election to become a city or to stay a township, I went to all those meetings and listened to the candidates who wanted to become our mayor and other offices for Credit River Township. I listened very carefully, and I very specifically voted for those people who very clearly said, I want to keep Credit River the way it is today. And from what I'm hearing here tonight, I would guess a lot of these other people voted that same way. So I'm just asking, please think about what you promised us and what your plans are to keep it that way. Thank you.
I hope we paid the electric bill. Thank you, Kathy.
Hi, Dixon Gimple. I'm at 16065 Hampshire, and basically right here, this property, with some ghosting on it, but hiding most of the whatever may or may not be going on there. I just, you know, looking at the 2040 plan, I just want to make a comment that it really is a shame that this 35 is not the direction as the plan shows for water sewer. That 35 wants to be developed. As far as I know, most of us here don't, and I can speak for, I don't know, folks were up there earlier, but you know, if you're gonna make complicated 45 and 90 with sewer here, I don't know. I mean, just think about that. I know that's probably locked in stone already, but that's really a shame. I'm up here, little frustrating things with this plat. I realize that I'm ghosted in here, but I'm in Credit River, and whatever's happening for may or may not be happening on my lot may be relevant to some of this. So in the future, I think it'd be great if there's a ghost plan that shows all the properties that are impacted entirely, or could be, so we can understand the window of the future maybe, and come up here and make more informed comments. But being here, Summergate did come and sit at my island. They didn't go to yours, and we talked briefly. They weren't there very long. We talked about, they got the 10 acres to the north for 100,000 an acre. We can't get mine for that, right? Because my house is already worth more than that. So they're not interested. Okay, they didn't talk to these guys. They did not talk to these guys. I don't think they talked to anybody in the cul-de-sac, because it's a math problem and it's hard. I get that.
Sir, would you mind speaking at the, because the people online may not be able to hear you.
So it's a math problem, I get that. And the idea is for all people with a piece of the pie, the city, the developer, and the landowners to get as big a piece as they can. So they were able to talk a party into and to do a purchase agreement to come across them. They've got a home that maybe they want to move on. That's great. I love those people, but Summergate's interested in making the most money, just like the landowners and you guys are, but we're not involved in this. So I really look to you guys to help make better decisions for this based on if they can't afford my house because it's too much. I'm worried that these 65-foot lots are gonna bring down my property value and houses around me. So who's considering that? I mean, is there a way to make this work now? 65 feet. I went online, Pulte to the north of me. I mean, I can't find any lot that's that narrow. You know, so these campsite lots. I mean, what kind of a house is gonna be on that? I'm concerned about that and hoping you guys are too. You know, could we have, you know, and they're smaller than 3 lots per acre. So is there a size that works for everybody? Can Summergate bring their own builders instead of letting anybody build and build higher quality homes, sell a lot for more? Is there a way to make the math work? Couple last comments.
If
I
you
want
can
to
wrap
make.
it up, your 3 minutes are up, so. just-
They're up? I thought it was
Yeah.
5 minutes.
No, it's 3,
Oh,
but that's okay, we'll just wrap it up.
all right. So, anyway, this is starting here, water and sewers way down here. How's it getting there and who's paying for it? There's a bridge down here that needs to get rebuilt. Who's paying for it? There's a lift station way down here on 175th. And I stood at the hole when they buried the trunk line at the end of it. That trunk line will not go into that creek. So is this lift station capable of pushing all that head of sewage to an uphill finish? That's for you guys to decide, but nobody's told me they're putting a lift station on the property. So keep us involved and informed. So that's all I got.
Thank you, and we will.
Leave a couple of copies here.
That's fine. Why don't you hand them to, I'll take them. Thank you very much.
Diagrams.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Jay Satterback. I think some of you know me, the rest, good to meet you. I've heard a lot of the comments that I was going to talk about, gone through already. My biggest concern is Credit River ready for this? And do we have the infrastructure in place to support this? Because one of the problems with this development is it's the bottle stop. As soon as this one's in, just to the south of it, there are some large acreage lots that are already owned by developers that are waiting for this to come through. And we are going to have rapid development when you take the cork off of this thing. And I'm really concerned about whether you're ready for it. I understand that 165th Street is now the collector for this, but do you have anything in process to take care of separating the residential and public foot traffic from that street? And you're going to pack a lot of cars through in a rapid order. Do we have other planned infrastructure in order to support it? And are we too early with it? That's my concern. My other concern with it is who's paying for all of that infrastructure that we're about to engage in? And really, development needs to pay for itself. If the growth in here needs to pay for the infrastructure costs, it shouldn't become a burden to all of the other taxpayers because somebody makes a lot of money changing the use of a property. That's how developers make the money. I don't begrudge them that, but they make money by changing use. And the more you can change the use, the more money you make. But when you leave Credit River with this mess that we're about to have and a bigger one, should we not say, let's get all your ordinances in place to guide the development. Let's figure out where the traffic's going to go. Do the infrastructure. Let's figure out how to get the developers to pay for it because you're going to have a whole bunch of them get done. And this is a little bit more than putting in turn lanes. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Can I get a show of hands? How many left? This last one? Great. Thank you. You're the
My name is
last.
Eric Solberg. I live at 7491 165th Street East. Just going to echo a couple of comments that were already made. So the first just being the density, and my understanding, Bill, you commented on the density of these properties being tied in with sewer, city and water and the lack thereof in those properties. But again, the current proposed density is 19 times greater than the home per acre density. And it just seems like an odd pocket to try and bring this into when all the homes surrounding it are 2.5 acre lots that can't support more homes on them. And so it seems like trying to fit a rock into a hard place. Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Oh, we do have one more? Okay.
Timeline, Jim Prohaska, 7296, 165th Street. Curious for the development of this northern third of Credit River. Is there a timeline and any requirements by law that it has to be developed on a certain timeline? And the question on city sewer and water for 165th Street. It's probably not a question of if, it's when, and is there a requirement time-wise when that could happen? So,
Great question.
yeah.
I'm not sure we can answer that tonight. Cindy, are there certain timelines that that you're aware of?
There are no timelines that any developments, that any properties have to develop by, if that makes sense.
Or city water coming in? to our
Right,
city?
except that we always have to have a comp plan that's in compliance with Met Council rules.
Right.
And when you do that, development could come in. But that said, nobody's required to sell their property, so it can take decades, literally, till there's willing buyers and sellers and market demand to
Yeah.
have any.
I mean, that's a roundabout. We don't know what the timeline is
Okay.
yet. So,
That's the question for in general.
Yeah.
But once we receive an application,
Mhm.
once, the developer or somebody just comes in and says, I want this land use, they're making an application. Then, under Minnesota law, we have.
The clock starts.
60-day clock.
Yeah.
And we can extend it one time to 120, but after that, we have to process it.
Mhm.
Or it's automatically approved,
Mhm.
unless they give us more time, which
Mm-hmm.
they may or may not.
So that gets to my next question for this development specifically. Is there a timeline where it's going to happen, or we can delay it down the road?
We have no control over whether it's going to when it happens and stuff is going to be dependent in part on a lot of different variables. The availability of sewer and water, the availability, the developer applying to a certain land use application. These things are all, there's nothing before us yet. We've received no applications, we've received no paperwork other than the information that you heard about here tonight.
Yeah.
So this is.
Yeah, we received that.
Yeah. And those 85 acres or 88 acres, did I hear correctly? There are already purchase agreements or contracts in place for those?
We don't know. That's something that maybe
That's
they can.
private, it's not something that we have. It's not unheard of for those types of contracts to be negotiated, but they're contingent upon getting all required approvals and stuff. So again, that is not something that we're privy to. We have no
Okay.
ability to obtain that information.
Yeah, just trying to determine, has the ship sailed already? Or do we have an instrument that as a group, we can come together and essentially delay it, or at least get rid of this campsite? Yeah.
To answer your question as a group, no. This is something that is mandated. There's a lot of different people with different requirements. We have, and in most of this, I hate to say this, you've heard the density requirements of the Met Council. We have to comply with the Met Council rules and regulations. And so our comprehensive plan was created with that understanding from the Met Council. They had to approve that plan. And then our ordinances, the statute, the ordinances, our rules, our laws, that people have to be consistent with that plan. And so it's not something that we have complete control over. And we do our best. And we've read all of the comments that everybody, I've read them, I know Cindy has, I know Shane has it, and as the staff for the city. And we do our best to address all of those various issues, working with the developers throughout this whole process. And a lot of this, and then we, and a lot of this is Cindy and Shane as the planner and engineer. And then I memorialize it all in detailed contracts. The Once we give the approvals, then we memorialize it in contracts and we get letters of credit, security, money to guarantee that what we have approved, the developer in fact is going to construct. And if they don't do it under the terms of the contract, we get the ability to go do it for them using their money. And so it's a lot of a process. This is the very beginning. As Shane said, we have the map, the graphic, and that's it. And so right now, that's what we're working.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this will be the last, that's fine. You're gonna make a comment on something that hasn't been made already? Yes. Okay. This will be the last one though. We have to call it then. And if anyone else that hasn't spoke tonight, please, by all means, bring your comment or send the comments to Cindy and she'll make sure that our entire city council and the planning commission receive.
Hi,
Hi.
thank you. My name is Jamie Johnston. I live on 8056 165th Street East, which is this property right here. My husband spoke earlier. What I've been hearing tonight is very preliminary. And I think we all came here to try and impact that, right? I mean, our comments, our concerns from the beginning. And I'm confused because it's so early. I was surprised to see it on the website as a future development, to be honest. Like that was alarming to me. It seems like it's farther along in the process. Does anybody comment on that?
It's not farther along in the process. What you heard is what we've heard.
Yeah.
So. Wait.
Okay, wait, yeah.
Comments?
Why don't you address, we put it on the website because it was sent out to residents?
So as you know, the city has a new website. I'm sure many of you noticed that just in the last couple of days, the
Right.
website's changed. So we will be putting up all developments that are in some sort of a review process, along with developments that are maybe in construction and those types of things too, to give people updates along the way. So that's the first one we built out because we knew there would be a lot of people here this evening and interested in this one. But you'll see all the rest of, there's kind of placeholders for several of them. You'll see all of those rest of those pages get built out. So the purpose though is not that it is super far along or that there's been anything going behind the scenes. We're trying to get information out there to the public so that you can find that really fast and easily.
So to your point, you could have said proposed future development. So that way, what you're stating is it says future development, meaning boots on the ground, we're going.
Yeah.
It's a proposed
Yeah.
future development.
Right. Yeah, the other ones on the website are approved. So it was just, what's going on here? I mean, especially because probably only 50 people got letters, right? And then the rest of the people on the road that's impacted by traffic weren't notified, so.
We probably should relabel it maybe or something.
I mean, it does say concept plan, but I guess we thought this was part, we didn't know how many times you have to speak on the concept plan, right? We don't know how far that gets as a normal person outside of the, city council or planning commission, what that actually means. What I'm also confused about is Met Council. I keep hearing 3 acre or 3 lots per acre. Is that anything that we can actually affect would they accept 1 acre lots? Would they accept, I know 2.5 acres is the minimum for city sewer water, or I'm sorry, personal septic and well, but what about, we are a rural community, and I think people desire more of a backyard personally. I mean, I lived in Burnsville and I had a bigger yard than these do. So, and we moved from there 8 years ago. So what is the maximum that we can do? I mean, I heard you speak earlier. Is that set in stone? That's what we want to know, I guess, because it really, what is the maximum that we can do? We know there's development coming, but what can we do to preserve our way of life? And for the new residents too, I know people in the Pulte development that aren't exactly happy with it now because maybe they were in the first phase of the development and now they're looking in people's living rooms, So I think, what is the biggest we can go? I know it's not.
Bob, I can't answer that. I mean.
I don't know that I can answer that. I don't deal with the Met Council.
Yeah.
I get brought in when there's legal issue that we have to, but
Yeah.
generally, most communities, it's trying to lobby the council. You're trying to influence them like you're trying to influence the planning commission and ultimately the city council. But again, they have their own policies and they're in the sewer business. And this is what they're concerned about. They need to make sure that the whole system this whole geographic area works. And so they do impose, and well, I think most communities, if you gave them an opportunity, would want larger lots. But this is something that we do have to comply with their requirements.
Yeah.
So I can answer that. It's an average of 3 units per acre that we have to meet at a minimum across the whole Seward part of the community in the future. To do that, you have to basically, it's a big complicated math problem. We have to calculate and balance out density across every parcel in that long-term sewer service area. So you can do larger lots in some areas, but that means you have to do more apartments in other areas, for example. So it's a trade-off, basically.
So it could be possible to have bigger lots potentially down the road. I mean,
It's a trade-off.
Yeah.
That is not in the comprehensive plan right now, because when the plan was developed in 2019, the trade-off was to have as much single family as possible and not as many townhomes and smaller apartment buildings. Like I said, the city could certainly decide to make half the acreage apartment buildings and have really large lots on the rest. But it's not likely, nobody's gonna accept those in their backyard probably,
Mhm.
and it would be in somebody's backyard. So it's a balancing game.
Okay. Just 2 more quick things with the development. I'm also wondering, because the residents there are moving to Credit River for the Credit River feel as well. And I didn't see any trails around the development. I've seen a lot of developments that back up to wetlands where there's trails around the whole community, right? For people to walk, and 165th is not going to be safe for public, for public to ride their bike, the kids to ride their bike, to walk on the side of the street. Like I see so much of that now. So I'm just wondering if there's a trail system that's going to be built into that. I can't tell if the wooded area is actually a park or if it's just a wooded area that says park, but if there's going to be play structures for those families, but like I said, the trail system, it's beautiful back there. I would hope that they have a way to walk around that, and us as well, because really we're not going to be able to walk on the road anymore. So that was one of my questions. And then we also have, can you pull that map back up? Or well,
The
actually,
concept plan?
yeah. This is the hill. This is the hill. I'm just on the other side of where the hill is up. You can't see people coming out until they're there. So that's why I'm nervous about making it out on the road. So there isn't a speed limit outside on our road, but from what I know, it's 35 miles per hour. And people fly from the park, fly over that road. So I don't know. I believe there's 440 feet, but depending on how much, that's at 35 miles per hour. But if you go up in miles per hour, that's not going to be enough.
Okay,
I mean, that will be studied, but I'd like to put that out.
okay,
I think that's all I have.
great. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to close the resident comment section. Like I said, if you have any other comments, please send them to Cindy and she'll make sure that city council and planning commission members receive them. I just want to thank everyone tonight for, I think this was a good session. It gave us a lot of information to think about. And like I said, it's really early in the process. And before we wrap things up, I don't know if Summergate do you want to have do you have any comments after listening to anything?
They can't hear you back.
I'm sorry. I was just wondering if Summergate had any, do you want to make any final comments before we move on tonight?
Probably no additional. We've taken
Okay.
notes and we're really gonna
Great.
take the city's lead on how and when.
Okay, great. Okay, I think we're going to end that part of the meeting then, and move on to the next one. We have no decisions we have to make related
No,
to
there's no
this.
decisions there. This was just information.
Right.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Should we take 1 minute? Is a lot of people going to be leaving probably, or you want to talk about the shoreline ordinance? Thank you. Thank you. everyone. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Here, do you want to hand that to me? Yep. Hey, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Please take your conversations outside. Thank you. Cindy, do you want me to just take pictures, send you PDFs of this stuff, or do you want it, or?
I'll take that and I'll make copies of it for everybody and, yeah. Yeah. I can scan this.
Okay. The next thing on our agenda tonight is to review a draft of the new shoreline ordinance. Each commission member should have received a brief report dated 9/15 prepared by City Planner Nash. It's a draft and then also a draft shoreline ordinance with a bunch of amendments and as well as a shoreline ordinance map. So Cindy, could you take us through what we're proposing here, what we're starting to work on?
Sure. So when Credit River adopted its zoning ordinance a couple years ago, you were still a township. And townships can't regulate shoreline. The county has to do it in that case. So even though you had a zoning ordinance, it was being done by the county, but we have to do our own shoreline ordinance now that we're a city. So this is a first draft that's before you. The vast majority of everything that's in there is required by the Metropolitan Council way too many times tonight, required by the DNR this time. So there are a couple things that they have in their model ordinance that are different in here. One key one that I want to talk about is that what's required typically under their model ordinance is that the height of structures within the shoreline zone can only be 25 feet. This draft includes a height of 35 feet that we'll be proposing that they grant us implementation flexibility for and allow us to do instead. It's been 35 feet while it was in the county. That 25-foot height requirement is a height requirement specific to cities and shoreline. So that's a burden on several property owners existing who are already taller than that amount. And certainly not what many developers were thinking with the lots that they have that they're trying to build homes on right now.
Can I ask you a question before you go on?
Yeah.
Why couldn't we, instead of doing all of these changes, why couldn't, or creating a new one, why couldn't we just use the Scott County one that we were under the township and just make the one change for the 35 feet versus the?
Because there are a few other things that
we have to do.
yes, a couple things. So first off, the Scott County ordinance was adopted quite a while ago.
Yeah.
And they've made changes to their requirements over the years that aren't necessarily reflected in the Scott County one. So the formatting of what's in here is based on the Scott County one. And then I had to change it to address all the things that we had to do extra.
Okay. Because I was surprised at how many things it looked like they were being amended or changed and all that stuff. When we had a shoreline ordinance, and my understanding is you were looking at it for one specific thing, and now there's like I didn't count.
Yeah, no, it was never for once, but it was for the whole ordinance.
Okay.
The issue that has been brought to everybody's attention was the one specific thing
Okay.
because
And this is
When-
kind of common.
yeah.
It is,
Because I'm-
okay.
I'm working with another town. Just took over planning and zoning, not a city, but when we were working through all the ordinances, we were working with the state to review this stuff, and all of the counties shoreline and stuff was not up to date.
Yeah.
And so when the planner that they used started looking at this and started, working to adopt our zoning ordinances and working with the counties, we had a number of meetings. We brought it to their attention, your stuff is not up to date. And that was, so there's a lot of these county ordinances that just haven't been brought up to speed. Cindy's, what I hear Cindy doing is bringing a lot of these changes that are required by the state to
Okay.
meet their model
Yeah.
in, and also we're gonna ask for some variances in the sense
Yeah.
of right from model.
Do you think all of these new changes that we're making though, will that slow down the process from asking for the one thing that I know somebody was been asking for? I mean,
No, their process is what it is, and they'll have to go through the whole ordinance. They'll be reading it line by line against the wording they have and making sure that It's not that it has to meet it word for word, but the intent and effect of it still has to be there.
Okay,
Um,
all right, I'll let you go on. I just,
yeah, so it's in a different order than their model. You know, it takes them some amount of time to do all that cross-referencing.
okay,
So the big thing is that 35-foot height requirement. Another thing is that by becoming a city, the water features that have to be protected under the shoreline ordinance, the minimum size became smaller, so we had to add 3 features to it that Scott County wasn't regulating before. They're generally some larger wetland kind of features that show up on the public waters inventory. But again, there's different requirements for counties versus cities, so now we have to meet that one. And there was a couple optional sections in their rules that that I incorporated in when I didn't think that the language would be necessarily more restrictive for anybody, but the language was better and had more clarity to it than some of the original language. So some of those I included automatically. And then there was one that I pointed out in here that in a side note on page 23. For example, that section or that paragraph that's highlighted in blue is optional. It is something that's additional that's required. But given that it's related to floodproofing and betterment of that situation, I'm recommending that we include it, even though it would be an additional requirement for people to consider when they're developing.
do any of these changes you're making going to put any other lots that are already developed in like non-conformance?
They're probably, I mean, I'll just be honest with that, they probably already were under the counties too. Because shoreland ordinances primarily came into being in around the 1990s. And so anything that was pre-existing might be too close to the river, you know, and couldn't be built if we were doing it today.
So do we have to notify those residents of these changes and that they're gonna now be, so when they try and sell their land, sell their property?
There's no legal requirement. They're just considered a legal non-conforming.
Okay,
In other words, they're legal because they were there already.
Yeah.
But they no longer conform to the current requirements.
Okay.
And so therefore, they're a legal non.
and they won't have a problem selling their land or their home?
They shouldn't, because what they have currently is
Right.
legal.
Right,
They may not be able,
So
somebody
it's-
buying their property may not be able to expand the non-conformity.
Yeah.
Which may impact the price that people are willing to pay.
Okay.
But again, remember, these rules are models across the board.
Yeah.
So no matter where you go, if you're in a shoreline, you're gonna have a lot of these same requirements. And as I said earlier, a lot of these county ordinances are not up to date. They don't have these current requirements. And what happens is, once they get brought to, usually when it gets brought to the state's attention, they communicate with the county and say, you need to update this.
okay,
So that'll be updated at the county level as well.
okay.
I know, Bob, you probably can't answer this, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. When I go around Prior Lake, Lake Minnetonka, or any of those structures, those massive structures, they're way over 35 feet. I know they're in the shoreland district. How do you solve that issue moving forward? I mean, they're still building those things. I mean, I know it's Scott County, I know it's a different animal, but I get concerned that we're gonna create something that's gonna become very cumbersome for us as well. And I assume it's cumbersome for Scott County.
So first off, Prior Lake has had an ordinance for a long time. And they actually have a 35-foot height requirement, and that's why you're seeing some larger structures in there. And the way you measure height based on shoreline rules, it's a calculation that also takes into effect highest slope and roof lines and how you design the roof lines. So there are ways of, it's not as straightforward as you might just expect that you can measure from point A to point B and here's your height. Not saying that that's not passing any judgment on that. That's just
No, I
the
understand.
way that it is. And
I just didn't want to create something that's going to be an issue for us later too.
we don't have a choice but to adopt a shoreland ordinance. It's required by state law and we've received our notice that we have to do it.
And what you heard me say earlier is that we're gonna also ask for an accommodation from the state. You know, to allow us to go up to the 35 as well, to give the residents of Credit River the same opportunity to prior acre.
I understand the 35 thing. I mean, I know this has been in the background for a while here. But what I don't, when I was reviewing this, I got really frustrated. As I'm sure you did as well, putting it together. My concerns were that we got Scott County's plan that we've been following, or we could follow. And I don't want to rush through the shoreland ordinance without really taking a hard look at it. Because when I start looking at Minnesota rules, part 70.20-300, I don't know what those are. And I want to do justice to this and not just slide it on through, because I mean, I've got to answer to people too, as you guys do. Why did you pass that stupid thing when you didn't even know what anything was?
Sure. So obviously tonight we're just bringing it to you to introduce it to you
Yes,
and conceptually at the moment, depending on DNR review, we'll probably schedule a public hearing for it for October. That said, what I can do if it would help you is I could annotate a version of this so that you can see this relates to this. And so this is totally required. I can give you some other background documentation. You'd have to do a lot of cross-referencing, to be honest, which, but I'll try to make it as clear as possible what things are totally, you don't have any choice on at all versus what things you can tweak a little bit.
Color coded or.
Yeah, I'll come up with something.
For example, when I look at the map, and I've got 5 circles on here that aren't in the shoreland ordinances, but I think they probably should have been. And then I look at some of the streams, creeks, rivers, whatever, ditches, the ditches is the word that goes through there. And I know we're dry now. And I can jump over most of these, and I've got a bad hip and a bad knee. So, and I'm old. So I don't know why they are still in the shoreland ordinance, identified as being in the shoreland ordinance.
No, and that's a great question. So everything that's in here, by statute, it says that we have to include public waters of certain types of categories in our shoreland ordinance. So everything that's in here meets that requirement. Now, some of the obvious ones that people are going to look at the map and go, oh, that's really weird. It's a whole stretch of what we think is the Credit River that's not in the shoreline.
Yes.
That's the really obvious one, right?
Yeah.
And that's because the Credit River was ditched along the way. And so that is not, or, big segments of it were. So that is not required to be in the shoreline. But at the same time, you have small little creeks that fed into the Credit River. Yeah. That are on that public waters inventory map. And so they do have to be included. And we don't have, there is a process that theoretically the city council could ask the DNR to change some categories. It's not likely to happen.
When does this have to be adopted by? Do you have you want it done by October, November? Is there a date floating out there?
So no, ultimately there is some slightly longer term date it has to be adopted by. We do have some anxious property owners who are wanting for it to be adopted to provide some clarity to their situations.
Question in the now city of Credit River. Do we have a rule on pervious soils? What percentage of hard cover on a city lot, especially as we start talking about proposed future developments? Are we 25% hardcover maximum? What are we looking at when we start talking about lot densities? What's our hardcover? rule?
So it's not uniform per property. It's uniform per zoning district. So different districts have different requirements. And then the shoreland ordinance is an overlay ordinance. So what you have to think of it as is whatever that underlying property is zoned. So say it's a rural residential and then it's got the shoreland sitting on top. Whatever is more restrictive between the two is what they have to meet.
Okay.
So when we are, your lower impervious surface though is going to be on your rural residential lots, for example. And then on lots that are R1, like in the Casey addition, for example, they have a higher impervious surface limit.
Right.
Go back, one more question. If we go back to the non-conforming. I'm selling my property. I've disclosed everything. I don't know that I'm a non-conforming. What kind of issue do you run into for the new and the seller, the buyer and seller? That's anything that's we run into any challenges in it?
So I'm going from memory here. I don't think that the real estate disclosure form has anything related to shoreland rules on it or anybody having to claim that they have any knowledge about it. And even if it did, you only have to disclose what you know about.
Yeah, and you're also supposed to know, that you get your title. You get a title report, it'll say subject to, this easement of road easement, subject to this trail easement, whatever, usually they also say, subject to zoning. Ordinances and stuff, or it's usually just a general, generic language. And you're, ignorance of law is no excuse, but that's what this is. You're supposed to know what's on your property records and what you're responsible for. And so a lot of times people will contact the city or the town and ask, is this allowed? Is this not allowed? We're very cautious about answering any of those types of things because of what they call an estoppel argument. So if we tell somebody, yes, you can have this much of impervious, or you can have your building at this height, or whatever it is, and they can, especially if they can get us to do that in writing, like an email or whatever, they can go into court. And I've had clients of mine be sued because some staffer or some clerk at the desk said, "Oh yeah, you can do this," and or sent them an email when it turned out that the city council or the staff said, "No, you can't do this." They've been sued the city. So we try to stay away from getting involved as a city in people's things. We tell them, you need to go and review the city's ordinance. If you need a copy of them, they're on the website, here's where you can find it. But we are very cautious about not giving somebody an estoppel argument because that might cause us lawsuit and damage.
Speaking to Abe's point, does title insurance look into that?
That
No.
they title insurance doesn't go into any of that. They'll tell you what's in the official record at the county recorder's office.
Okay.
And they usually have a disclaimer, if it's not here, we're not responsible for it. We're only going to look what's either they look online at the county recorder, or they actually have somebody physically go down to the county and look at the deed books and all of that. But generally, there is in any of those title opinions and title reports, there's very clear disclaimers. So it's nothing, we're not responsible for anything that's actually not in the records. If they miss something, well, then of course, they usually insure over that themselves,
So will we know who's in non-compliance when we?
Nope.
So how would property owners know that they're in non-compliance?
They probably wouldn't know until they try to submit a building permit to put a large addition to the rear of their home, which brings them too close to a setback for a river or something. But honestly, that's true about any of our ordinances.
Yeah, I was just trying to think, how do you protect individuals. And, you know, when you have no idea you're buying something.
We don't. And because if we did, and we told you, you're okay, and we were wrong, we get sued, and we may have damages and stuff. So that's why I was pointing it out to you deliberately. When I see these and I get questioned with Cindy or another planner or an engineer or somebody, they go, oh, no, I put the brakes on right away, because I'm not familiar with it. I had to defend it, you know? And so it is something that, it's something that you really feel strongly about. If you're buying a piece of property, especially in the shoreline, and you have a concept of what you want to do with it, then you do need to start asking specific questions to see if what you are buying, what you want to do with it, probably once you get it, is allowed.
And that's why you see developers, for example, they don't buy property outright. They go through all of the development process and then they buy the property at the end of it. Because they know then they've done all of that due diligence and that research to figure that out.
And a lot of times we can go a step further. It's contingent on them getting the approvals from you guys and the city.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, this title work that I received that I've looked at, a lot of times I've drafted the paperwork on, has somebody else, they don't close until like a couple of days before the plat and everything, all of that stuff's gonna be recorded. And so then you have to change the paperwork on. But that happens. And that's normal. I can understand that. And I'm assuming when these guys say it's under contract, yeah, they have a piece of paper, but they probably have a couple of different ways to get out of it if something doesn't go their way.
Cindy, I had one question, I'm looking at the definitions on, I think it's page 6. I don't see where the setback definition includes wells. Is that something that is typically included or not? I was just.
Sorry, let me get there. No, that's, we added that just last month and I haven't picked that up in here yet. So, because that is our existing definition, I believe.
There's lots of digestion.
Right, so we have time to read this, but you're gonna give us a updated one with color coded and next month we would have public hearing then?
Yes.
I mean, do we have to go through all of these things tonight or did you want to?
Nope.
Okay.
I just wanted to introduce the topic to you, see if you had any initial questions. It's good to know you'd like some additional info to
Might
help digest it and
What is required? What for us to be able to weigh, to understand, and make sure that whatever recommendation we make is one that's fully informed.
Yeah, I think we saw that in our last state legislature where THC all of a sudden got passed and everybody's going, well, how did that happen? You know, so I think that's what your concern was, what all of us, when we're dealing with the city, that we fully understand as much as we are capable of.
Yep.
What do we have to do? And what are choices for us as a city?
absolutely.
I just don't want to stand in the way of development. There are people out there that are looking, doing things. My comment initially was, my thought initially was, why can't we adopt the Scott County Shoreland Ordinance until we can get through all of this other stuff?
Right. You can't do it piecemeal. is what you're
So,
saying?
yeah, I probably should have explained that part of the process, but before we can adopt, the DNR has to review and bless our copy of the ordinance.
They
So-
you have to get something in mind.
Yeah.
But hasn't Scott County already had theirs approved?
But again,
It's
they
all-
It may have had it approved at one time, but as I stated earlier, a lot of these ordinances have not been reviewed. They have not kept up with the current requirements. And when you submit something back to them, and they will look for these things. The city said they're gonna take their model their requirements that they created, and they're gonna check ours to make sure every single thing that they are requiring is there. And if it's not, they're gonna comment on it, and they won't approve it until you do show them that it's now been modified to reflect that. And if they see, if they figure out that we are using a Scott County model and we don't have ours up to date, theirs isn't up to date, they will be sending a notice to Scott County saying, you now have to get yours up to date. And,
Oh, well.
yeah. And then the question.
They
is-
just charge us.
Yeah,
$1,000.
and that happened, I've seen it happen recently in other areas. Different counties.
I think that context is just really helpful. I have some. questions. Staff on arguments with the fact that it's out of compliance. And we need to have it done by the board.
And so
What's
do
in
they,
the context from me?
so do they, and they
And-
have to comply with the same requirement.
Yeah, and theirs would have complied at the time they did it and had it reviewed, but there have been some updates and things that have changed, so.
And I think what we heard tonight, even at the previous section of this meeting, is that the residents here are saying, okay, we have a city that we want to shape. And so that's when we became a city, we took that ability to say, what do we want Credit River to look like? And so when it comes to even shoreline and ordinance for that, this is our opportunity to look at those things that are available for us to have some latitude in and shape our future, rather than just adopting Scott County and saying, okay, we're good to go.
And the only reason I wanted to adopt Scott County is because of what's going on out in the community. I mean, as far as trying to move ahead for some of these people.
Is there gonna be is there a public meeting or,
There has to be a public hearing.
okay?
It's, because it's in the zoning ordinance itself and not related to a specific piece of property, we put a public hearing notice in the newspaper. But that's it. There will also end up being a notice on the city website,
Good.
but not a mailing in general to the
Sure.
community.
Yep.
As I'm putting together, sort of some sort of annotated thing that I'm envisioning, there are a number of things that the DNR recommends to be included, but can't require to be included. Do you want to see what those are as well?
Just a different color code, yes.
Okay,
Right?
Yeah,
it won't be, I'm not going to embed them in this document, in the working
Right.
document.
Yeah,
They'll
yeah.
be in some other
That's fine.
guidance
Yes.
document from them that I'll just highlight for you and
Yeah.
you can review them and see if you're interested. They definitely are things that predominantly go some step above in protection of resources.
And I think we've heard that well tonight, that it's important. So I think that'd be really valuable, so thank you.
Yep.
Great. Do we want to, are we done with that then?
Yep.
So we have a special meeting coming up for the planning commission. It's the, what date? It's the first meeting of the
October 3rd.
October 3rd, and it's before the city council meeting, so it's at 5:30. So
Yes.
Everyone knows about that. Yeah, okay, great. All right, if there's no other business before us, can I get a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Steve, I have a motion to adjourn tonight's
I'll
meeting.
second.
Seconded by Mark, all in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion hearing none, motion to adjourn is carried. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, residents, for sitting in and listening to us tonight. Thank you. Yes.
Right.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, well, I think a couple of struggles in this afternoon, but I'll have to get those out. But yeah, it wasn't as many as I actually thought.
Sorry.
But- Yeah, maybe.
Oh, yes.